Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for what should be yet another interesting discussion. I am Stefan Pape, just as I was earlier, and I will be moderating this second panel, this time looking into movie financing and the investments made in films by relying on artificial intelligence. Joining us for this panel, we have Vincent Favre, a Swiss serial entrepreneur and business angel. Vincent founded the Scale Up Factory, which finances future European scale-ups. His main focus is on creative tech, but prior to that, he led the Belgian Emotion AI scale-up Newsymap SA, while specializing in financing the creative industries from Berlin. Thanks for being with us today, Vincent. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. Welcome, and many thanks to everybody.
And joining him is Magnus Thomassen, the CEO of the Zephyr Media Fund, one of Norway's largest film investors. From the ever-growing and always impressive Scandinavian film industry, Magnus has a background as an IP lawyer and is a graduate from the National Film School Producer Programme. How are you today, Magnus?
I'm good, thanks, Stefan. Sun is shining and the spring is coming to Bergen, Norway.
I know, yeah. It's even sunny in London, which I can't say very often. And lastly, we have Ilaria Lauzana, who is the tech lead at Largo. Ilaria is in charge of developing models for financial forecast predictions of the Largo.ai platform and overseeing the technology development. It's great to have you with us today, Ilaria. How are you? Is it sunny where you are too?
Thanks. Yes, I'd say it's fairly sunny. It's good in Switzerland too.
And just a quick reminder too, before we get started, that at the end of this panel, we will have time for a few questions from the audience. So to those watching, please do feel free to join in with the discussion if you have any questions you'd like to ask. There's a Q&A function just at the bottom of your screen. If you just click that, you can type in the question. And if you just say who the question's aimed at, hopefully I'll get around to asking as many as I can at the end. Well, firstly, let's find out how each of the three panelists uses AI in their current profession. Vincent, I'll start with you. When it comes to investing in the movies, how do you think AI might leverage that investment?
Yes, many things. I think it's a key question. I'm personally a strong believer in the power of AI. So I've made 4 investments in the sector for startups from psychographic profiling and B2C fintech dashboards and others. I would say, for me, it can be a strong layer of intelligence that is added to the industry. I consider it a bit of a superpower, but of course, it's not making the work. It's kind of complementing the talent and the intuition of the film industry. So for me, it's all about helping the financiers to take a well-informed decision. So it's helping the decision-making process. And I think for all of the partners in the financing of a project, the film industry for me is a very well-structured industry. So of course there is a private equity side of financing, so private investment, but there is also basically the channels, the distributor, the MGs that we receive, and the pre-sales. And I think that all of these players can benefit from AI as such.
Magnus, I was going to come to you next. The Zephyr Media Fund provides funding for the movies. How is your decision process for funding, and how do you think AI can contribute in that?
Well, as a starting point, we always require a sort of prospect from the producer. Describe the project. Naturally, we need a script and the financial documents with regards to financing plan and recoupment plan. And from there is naturally a negotiation. And I have, for the past 2 years that I've been the CEO of Zephyr, I've been sort of longing for a more like basic objective instrument where we can put in our data and sort of on a level playing field. I mean, internally and also towards our board of directors can discuss objective criteria. And I've actually found it surprisingly hard to establish something like that. And with the growth of artificial intelligence on a lot of other fields, I've been kind of searching, or at least thinking, that this is something that should be done in our field of business as well. And my excellent colleague, David Leader, who's been a producer for quite a few years, he picked up on the Swiss-based Largo AI, and we've been working with them for the past 6 months, I believe, and it's been quite helpful to just change our mindset a little bit into reaching the more leveled objective fields of parameters in making our investment. But naturally, it's not something that we rely completely on. We still have our human subjective discussions internally before we make a decision, and of course there is usually a negotiation going on for months between us and ourselves and the producer. But we found it quite effective and interesting to use artificial intelligence instruments as a basis of our internal discussions. So it's been very interesting. Although I got to say, we've had a few surprises, both in a positive and a negative manner, on how these instruments work. But I do believe it's artificial intelligence with regards to film investments has a very bright future.
If I may jump in, I just wanted to build upon that in terms of how the workflow is managed on the financing side. You spoke about the objective data and market-driven analysis and so on. For example, at Just Temptation was my company in Berlin. We kind of financed 35 scores of part of the movie, co-financing movies. And you have to deal with a pipeline of 400 films, for example. And then the producer would expect that you read the scripts and that you fully dive into the production package. But this is humanly, I'm a very slow reader. So what should I do? You cannot read 400 books in 3 months because you have to take a decision in terms of financing. So I think I see really AI there as a way to enable the treatment of massive data and filter it in a way that is more manageable, and where the financier can actually assess the projects that they are interested in a ND and seamless manner. So an assistant to manage this quantity of data and to dig and to retrieve the gems in the mud, if I may.
Just following on from that quickly, it's always very important to remember that even though it may be sort of AI assisted, there's always a human behind every decision, isn't there, Vincent?
Yes, there is, and I think, I think there is a lot of the work that can be automized with the objective to concentrate on what matters, is the creativity, the uniqueness of the IP and the talents, and to understand, to have tools also to position that in the market, to understand what are the comparables, what is the market potential, where it plays out, what could be the optimization, and so on. So if you get all of this pre-organized from the AI, or partly organized by the AI, then you can be much more efficient in the discussion with the creative, and you can spend more time, qualitative time, on reading the scripts that are really matter for the decisions you are making.
Ilari, I'll come to you next. You are the tech lead in Largo.ai, which is, of course, providing AI services to the movie industry. How do you think AI can bring a leverage for the movie financiers?
So I'm going to build a bit on what Vincent has said as well, since he was talking about, of course, the amount of information that we can extract from large data. And personally, well, being a technical person, then I definitely believe that a lot of power can come from extracting the correct information from this amount of data. Talking especially in the sense of potential predictions for success in terms also of money, of return of investments. This was still done using data by big studios, by big platforms that had access to the data up to this moment. So in a sense, and I'm also tying back to the question, to the discussion earlier about democratization, because having the access to these models, to this data also as a third party can help you a bit level the playing field with this big studios, for instance, if you want to negotiate with them. So it also helps you to make your own prediction, have your own measure of potential for your project, to help also in this negotiation without having to trust blindly people that have the data and then can make this analysis as well. So I'd see also this as a way to have everybody also have measures to predict to predict the potential success and carry this into negotiations for leverage.
And obviously, you know, movie financing is found to be a very risky by the typical investor. This creates a very infertile private investment pool for movie producers, especially in Europe. How do you think this could change, Magnus? Can AI play a role in this?
Naturally, in the light of what I said earlier, it will play a role in it. But I do believe that the final decision will come from human intelligence, so to speak. There is always an element of the subjective assessment of each and every project, both in terms of the creative value, but foremost financial value of the project. But again, as Vincent is talking about, it's a very good tool to kind of as a background, and to kind of gather all the information that actually is present in a production package with regards to documents and so on, and on that background have proper discussions internally, as we do. So I would not trust the final decision of a high risk investment such as film investing in Europe actually is, or all over the world is. But I find it as a very handy tool, and I do believe it's still in its very early days. So I'm really excited to see how this will evolve in the coming years.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Vincent?
Yeah, I think, you know, I agree with it. I think there are some things that I believe AI cannot change, and there are things that I hope AI can contribute to changing. On the European, because we are in Europe, the European film industry is not targeting you know, profit, so to speak. I think in terms of mindset, the typical European film producer, if I may say so, is in my eyes more thinking about how can I finance my next movie after I did this one, and you know, and not necessarily targeting the big hits. Some do, but the general mindset is that, I think. And this is due also to the fact that European cinema is heavily subsidized, and you know, also working somehow with the national, I wouldn't say nationalist, but like based on the countries and the subsidy schemes. And I think, you know, this is a limitation for the private investments in movies. These two factors. So I think, you know, we have an extreme high level of quality in the European cinema, and I hope that like we can get to product also that circulate better and find their product globally. And this is where I think AI can contribute in the way to match this quality with a global audience that will find these movies. So if we look at this private equity investment, it's high risk, high reward, right? And what I would hope is that AI would allow financiers to take well-informed or better informed decisions on where to put, which bet to take, and where to put the money in terms of portfolio financing on pan-European level, and manage to mitigate the risk. So to end up with an equation that would be relatively at a mid-risk, let's say, with consolidated high chance of performances on the return side. So this is yeah, the double-sided sword on European film industry. I don't know if you agree, Magnus. I mean, I don't want to attack the nationalist, you know, financing from Norway, but you know, it's...
No, I completely agree with you, Vincent. I think in terms of mitigating risk, which is like kind of the essence of being an investor, it's in my everyday work, it's any sort of objective underlying tool I can present to my board of directors and to my investors is a good thing. They always ask for that. I mean, but do you have any concrete numbers? Do you have any, can you quantify your decision or your assessment of this and that in this project? And I find this far the AI tools pretty helpful for that. But it's still, it's kind of premature in the sense that the business is not used to it. So you have to explain what you're doing. But I also have to mention, which I think is quite interesting, is that at least for the producers we're working with here in Norway, they are very interested in what we're doing with artificial intelligence. Because I had kind of a certain notion that they would be very skeptical that we were pushing their scripts and their data into this Swiss database, and that was some robot mind doing something with it, and then it come out a result, and if the Swiss robot wasn't happy with it, they wouldn't receive any money for it. But actually it's quite the contrary. The producers has been very interested in this and seem to be very pleased that we are using these new tools, and they're very eager to have us share the results from the Largo system with them on their particular projects. So I think the business is very, at least here in Scandinavia, is very open for this, which I think is very positive. But again, to answer your question, Vincent, I think this will, for the time being, be a background tool, but which is very good helping quantifying the elements of our investment, our decisions.
Magnus, I'm just going to follow on quickly, because you mentioned it being used in Scandinavian sort of cinema. I found Norwegian cinema of late to be incredibly ambitious. You have some real big genre movies, you know, from Troll Hunter, but then The Wave, The Tunnel, Kon-Tiki. I just wondered if you think that ambition is kind of, does that marry up to using AI? Do you think that you could say that using AI looking forward, it's sort of is married to the word ambition? And do you think that's why perhaps Norway could be a country that embraces the use of AI assistance?
That's an interesting question, Stefan. At a poetic level, I think it is married to the terms ambition and artificial intelligence are married. But in reality, I don't really know. But I do agree with you that the ambitions of the Norwegian film industry definitely has increased for the past couple of years, and the producers has definitely upped the game, which is a very good development, in particular for us as investors, but also for the audience and the producers, naturally. But I do think what I mentioned earlier with the interest from the producers towards artificial intelligence actually is a sign of a sort of, professionality that has been increased. They want to be a part of a global industry, and they want to produce content that is up there with the global standards. And so they are also looking for tools to help them do that, such as artificial intelligence. So there definitely is some kind of correlation to that.
Can it be dangerous looking at a film with a metric of return on investment with the AI tools? Would this limit creatives? I'll start with you, Ilaria.
So, well, this will depend definitely on the type of tools that we use, what type of other metrics we put in place. So if we're imagining that we would create, as we were talking about earlier, like if we were creating a film from scratch, and then we would create the exact perfect scenes that would fit for the best possible return of investment. But this is not what is generally happening. So what is generally happening is that we are analyze the current project. We would find out what is the current content, what is the current specific nature of the project. For instance, at Largo, we would then give suggestions for casting. We would give certain suggestions over what is understood by AI. And then we would make predictions specifically for the project in question. So what happens is that it will take into account really the nature of the project, and the type of improvement that we'll have from there will be very different from project to project, and will be very much based on what is already available. There's never going to be like a drastic change that tells you like to switch through a high budget action movie because this is more profitable. So in this sense, if we use the correct tools and we work with people that actually care about the creativity, what is going to happen is that we're going to use the tools to help the current project shine within its own nature, without really modifying what the creative is trying to achieve, but really like making it shine within its own possibilities.
I'm going to throw that to you, Vincent, as well. Do you think that the AI tools could limit creatives?
I have more the impression that it can empower them. From the financier angle, I think AI is no magical formula. I think it's a mighty powerful tool, but it has limits, a lot of limits. I'll take maybe a few examples. Like if you take I was living in Germany before, and if you take the German hits, for example, you take The Life of Others or Goodbye Lenin. These are very small films. They were not meant to become word hits. And they are part of the only big hits from Germany. It's not like 20, 30 million. So the AI can make good can identify pattern and help you to take an informed decision. And I think it works on a statistical way. In a statistical way, if you do like Magnus, you invest in portfolio of projects and you have many investments, you cannot predict all of the things. And AI helps, but I think at the end the public decides. And also unfortunately, I think the marketing power and the way the film is distributed based also on the very way it's financed. And I think European cinema has a problem there, because you find great Norwegian film that will be seen in Norway, maybe in Scandinavia a little bit in some things, and then will disappear somehow. And sometimes you wish one gem from Norway to be like the global hit. And this is questioning the way films are financed, the tools that are used to finance them, and the way to mitigate risks globally, and to have the guts and the ambition to invest higher amounts on the pan-European level.
Magnus, I was going to come to you next. The European movie industry is still heavily occupied by Hollywood movies. Do you think one of the reasons for that is the lack of financial resources for film production in Europe?
I guess the answer is at least partly yes, but at the same time, my impression is that the European production companies are a lot more effective than the Hollywood studios with regards both to the creative development, but also the actual productions. When we've had the large Hollywood productions here in Norway, which we've had some of in especially our region here in the western part of Norway, it's a completely different industry where we think, which a lot bigger crews and so on. And as you said earlier, Stefan, the ambitions of Norwegian film production has increased quite a lot for the past decade. And in all Scandinavian modesty, I gotta say the output from such large productions compared to what we actually managed to do here in Norway with a lot of smaller resources is something that I think we should be proud of. So I think it has something to do with culture, how they used to spend a lot of money and with large crews and so on. But I guess in its meeting point with the audiences, it has a lot to do with marketing, which we see also here in Scandinavia, that the American blockbusters, they have such large marketing budgets, so everyone notices them, and it's only like a very few homegrown films that has budgets with regards to marketing to kind of deal with that. So I think I sincerely think that there is not a correlation between financing and creativity necessarily. You need, of course, a minimum level of money to produce something, but a good production is not necessarily an expensive production. And I think at least Scandinavian producers are better than that than the American ones. So that might be a force in the years to come. That we are able to make films cheaper. But now I'm a little out of what you actually asked me for. I do believe it has more with marketing than the actual production. This Hollywood domination of the European box offices.
I mean, yeah, you mentioned the strength of the kind of and how important the marketing is. Ilaria, I was going to ask you, how can AI and how can Largo.ai help sort of the assistance when it comes to the kind of marketing and promotional campaigns for movies, not just the kind of casting and storytelling aspects?
Well, of course, one thing that we analyze is, let's say, like the distribution. So we want to basically make sure that we are distributing in the correct markets, we are distributing in a correct way also. So for instance, we can change the level of the marketing budget that we want to include depending on the potential that we see on the project. So this will also reflect the type of release that we're going to have, and that is something that we can somewhat measure. Then of course, as we mentioned earlier, then it's like these measures can also be taken together with the measures from the human side, let's say, not just from the machine side, but we can definitely have an analysis of what is the type of release that it can have. So in this case, for instance, if I mention in this release, this marketing budget included and seeing what type of size of budget we should use for this project, then that's something that we can be reflected in the prediction. So in that sense, Largo can help with that, because it can help you understand, for instance, the size of release you want to have, which type of markets you'd want to really target this for, etc. Well, in terms of really like which markets should we improve our budget to make sure that this is going to be more visible than other big productions that are available at the same time, basically. So yes, I hope that was clear overall.
But following on from that, how does Largo.ai help for the greenlighting of decisions in practice that can be helpful for the right investment decisions?
Yeah, well, that's a similar way as well. So the idea is that we can take into account the full package, not just the distribution, for instance, or the various like ideas that we might have based on how we want to release this, where and what, and in which size of release, etc. But we can really have also an idea of how risky this is. Because, for instance, if we are having already selected a certain cast, we can check how this influences the prediction for the box office revenue, for instance. So at a certain sense, in a way, we'll have values, actual measurable values that will tell us how much this could make with the current content that we are considering, with the current packaging that we're considering. And it can help us figure out if there's anything that we need to change to make it instead go towards something different, let's say. So one example is, for instance, if content has a lot of potential, we could already choose to risk more and go for a higher, for larger marketing budget, for larger releases, etc. And it can help us decide whether it's possible or not to invest in this project, because it gives us a bit of a measure to compare it against the previous project and seeing what was the risk there and what is the risk right now, to decide whether this potentially could have a return on investment or not, or it could be a more risky project.
Vincent, I'm going to come to you next. Can art house movies attract private investment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in specific niche, yes. I think it's a tricky play, because you need to, when you do type of investment that are not just to cash flow the tax credit of a country or to do this type of operation, then you need to, to understand what is the upside that you can get. So I think there are different niches that are very profitable. You need to have a better idea of this particular niche and the market potential. And where Ilaria was speaking about the sales projection and how you can gain a secure feeling about the potential of a movie as a way to inform a decision on the marketing budget and on the potential of the film. I think this type of tools have been missing in the past, and I have the impression that to help increase private investment, notably in art house, such platform that Largo.ai and others are proposing are powerful tools. for me, it links a bit to kind of the question of platforms. You know, it's not only about the production, but it's the whole chain of value in the industry. So, what are the European platform, OTT platforms that can emerge from Europe? And I think these type of tools can also help, you know, distributors, OTT platform, new players, fast channels in the OTT world to consolidate. I think in terms of ambition, Europe have succeeded a lot. So, I mean, on the AI side, we have stars like Sepp Reiter, Jan LeCun, they are all Europeans, right? On the creative industries, we have also made big hits. In music, it's Spotify. In gaming, it's Supercells and King and so on. So we have giants. But in films, I believe we have to go from the mini studio to the studio size. We have to ramp up, to level up the ambition, and we have to create platforms, you know, like Viaplay, there, Join, and Salto, and these kind of platforms need to raise also, to emerge so that it can sustain European cinema and create also pan-European franchise blockbusters that can nurture and bring power to the industry. Because in front of us, you know, it's not to antagonize, but there are very strong players in the US and also in Asia. For, you know, the big players in the OTT world are not only producers; they are electronic, you know, conglomerates of electronic devices. It's Samsung, it's Huawei, it's Amazon, Apple, and so on. So we need to find a European way to carve out success with ambition in Europe, which is worth, for me, applies to art house and to the more mainstream blockbuster franchise. And I believe that the art house success is also arriving through a healthy ecosystem that is pushed forward with locomotives on the commercial side and on the studio and platform side.
That's fascinating. Magnus, what do you think are the challenges for the countries having kind of smaller production capacity, say, you know, Norway, Switzerland, Austria? Do you think AI can simplify connecting for co-production and joint investments?
My impression is that the producers in these smaller countries actually are pretty good at co-productions. They are very eager festival attendees, and they have most of them establish vast global networks with other producers that they like to work with. I think for a lot of the producers that we work most closely with, some of them have actually built a career on co-productions and through that co-financing, and they've have been pretty good at it in achieving financing for various parts of Europe. So I am not sure that artificial intelligence will change that to the better, but it would certainly not change it to the worse. I believe it, as we've been touched upon numerous times in this conversation, it's another tool to kind of help make a decision, both in terms of investing and the simple green light of a film.
So that's great. So the last question before I'll take some from the audience, is going to come to you, Ilaria. I mean, has the last year and the COVID pandemic changed anything in regards to how the film industry might see artificial intelligence? Is that kind of skepticism that comes with artificial intelligence lessening, do you think?
I think so. Well, once we were talking earlier about how this can be lower the risk, I do potentially think that this can happen because, well, we have a certain prediction, you have this measure, and you have also ways to measure the uncertainty for it. So a lot of people have found that in a world where things were less clear, were very new, they were coming towards finding that using tools such as AI tools that could give them a certain measure and a lot of uncertainty around them was the way to go. So I think we have had a bit of shift in towards these all new technology, not just AI, but also like streaming platforms, seeing the rise of a lot of those and people becoming less afraid of that. And well, from our point of view, that is good because we really want to continue collaboration and continue like the improvement with the new technology to help as much as possible you know, spread the creativity and get the possibility to watch movies on the go, etc. And on the side also make sure that we're not making too risky investments in a case where we cannot afford it.
So we're going to take some questions from the audience now. We've actually got the first one from our very own Sami Arpa, the CEO and founder of Largo. It's going to be directed at Vincent, I think. But Vincent, do you think that AI could play a role to convince business angels and VCs to invest in movies?
Yes, I think because quite a lot of financiers lost money in this, and especially when referring to business angels, because they don't necessarily, except they are really from the sector. Maybe there is kind of a Payet effect, like the film industry can seem quite attractive, and then you have only a few chances to make good money with it, and a lot of chances to lose your money. So I think if you can explain with quantitative and qualitative data that what is the path, how they will recoup, when and how, it opens a rational discussion, and then you can convince much more to invest. I think that's a key possibility. And yeah, I think discussing with some colleagues from engineers in London, from different funds, I see that there is really an attention. COVID also created a bit of a space to reflect on how to finance things and how to renew the business model of the industry. Sometimes there are some models that emerge, direct also production, direct pre-sales from the platforms, and there are different ways to redo that. And I was really impressed when I saw, for example, the workshop of Largo at the EFN that I watched. I was passive, watcher, and I thought, okay, there are more than 500 people in this room. And then I just watched before, and there were over 700 people having watched that online on YouTube. That makes up to more than 1,200 film professionals that took 1 hour to see a panel of this kind. So I think there is now we are in a phase of educating the market, and I think Ilaria and Sami do it very well, to basically see the upside and work with AI as a companion and as an assistant, but without hiding the weaknesses of our markets and the European market, and getting the ambition that is aligned with the quality of production that Europe has, because we are not there yet, in my opinion.
Yeah. The very final question is from Katja Mailan. She asked, how can AI be used for crowdfunding movies? I was going to ask you that one, Magnus, if that's okay.
Well, I think it's hard to say, but I guess from my point of view, these instruments can be used in the same way towards crowdfunding as they can be used as us as investors. I mean, you can kind of quantify some of these somewhat fiddly data that exists in a production package in regards to the prospect, so to say, and in that way you could easier sell your project to the crowd that you want to receive crowdfunding from. So I think it's kind of analog to how you could use it towards investors or from investors as ourselves. But I don't think it would have any substantial effect on crowdfunding in films, because the way I consider crowdfunding, it's more heart than financial analysis in crowdfunding. So I guess that just has more to do with how the project is presented creatively.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that great answer and all of the great answers. That's actually it now for the panel 2 today. Again, there will be another brief 5-minute interlude before Ana Maria Montero takes over for the third and final panel, which this time is looking at acting in the new digital age. But I just want to say thank you so much to the 3 wonderful panelists who joined us just now. I don't know about everyone else, but I feel like I've learned loads today. So I've really appreciated you giving your time and imparting your wisdom this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you everyone else for watching, and we'll see you in 5 for the next one. Thank you.